Hey guys, I've discovered that making vlogs are incredibly addictive and incredibly satisfying because it's basically you talking about yourself and having people watch you talk about yourself. And as an INFP, I totally love this, you know, intellectual and emotional masturbation. So that's really fun. So what I want to talk about tonight is um, emotions and feelings and how that relates to structure and productivity. So I know that sounds like a big fuzzy topic, but basically in my last video I talked about how INFPs can benefit from structure. So just really basic things like a consistent sleep schedule, a good diet and exercise. And these things sound pretty boring, but for me at least, I realize that I can often be my most creative, have my best ideas, and be the most productive when I do have routine in my life. And so now I want to talk about feeling, and this might not relate directly right now, but I'll tie it back together, so just keep watching. So feeling is obviously really important to the INFP because that's what the F in INFP stands for, and if I had to pick um, one letter for me that is the most important for me, it would be the F. I feel like well, exactly. That was totally subconscious, but I say things like that all the time. Feeling is the lens in which I view the world in many ways. So I often say things like, I feel like, I feel you. That's really kind of the way that I relate to people. And it took me a while to realize that not everybody relates to feeling in the same way. A lot of people do not hold emotion in the same regard as INFPs do. So for me, the way I feel about something is really, really important. So when I'm interviewing for a job, the way I feel about the work environment is tantamount. I feel like, again, I will take a job that's lower paying if I do feel like there's more integrity in the situation, if I like the people better. Likewise, when I meet somebody, I get a feeling about them right away, and I'm not saying I'm psychic or anything, but I've just come to trust my feelings and intuitions about people, and I am right most of the time. So, I can meet somebody and just think, oh, he's like a really sketchy guy. I really don't want to be around him. Or, I can meet somebody and think, okay, you know what? I really like this person and I think they're going to become my good friend. And so I'm usually right on about how I feel about people, and it's really hard for me if I don't feel like doing something to do it. And so this is how feeling relates to structure. So, yeah. So in my last video, I talked about how in high school there was a lot of structure. So I was forced to, for example, do a sport in the afternoon. So every single afternoon for the whole school year, I was doing, one sport or another. And I never felt like doing these sports. I'm a total homebody. Like, look at me. I'm like sitting on the couch right now. I have a comforter and I'm drinking tea. I'm like a grandma. So I never felt like doing sports. I never felt like going out and going for a run. Um, so it was only the structure that made me do these things, even though I never felt like it. But counterintuitively, the consequence was that after I would exercise each afternoon. I'd come home exhausted, but I'd feel so good about myself. I'd feel so accomplished, and it really just gave my life structure. You know how when you exercise, you get those endorphins pumping, you feel like you have so much more energy. I mean, I don't have to explain to you the benefits of exercise. I'm sure you know. But my point in saying this is that when I have been forced to do things that I wouldn't feel like doing, um, I have benefited from those things sometimes. So that illustrates a point in which, or an example in which, feeling is not the best way to make a decision, or emotion is not the best barometer to make a decision. So, like going back to exercise, I rarely feel like exercising, I don't have the emotion. I'm not excited about exercising, but when I'm forced to do it, when somebody else forces me to do it, I feel good afterwards, and it was a good decision, a decision that I would not have felt like taking. And so this is really crazy and confusing to me, because then I'm like, wow, feeling is tantamount to my paradigm, to the way in which I view the world. And if it is indeed true that certain decisions don't feel good but actually are good decisions, then how the fuck do I make decisions if feeling is how I make decisions? And this has really gotten me into some trouble. So, for example, in college, I would sign up for a course and I wouldn't feel like doing the homework because it was just hard. And I would say, you know what, I'm not interested in this. And sometimes it'd be like, well, I'm being true to myself by just dropping this course because it doesn't interest me, and I'm being more authentic by just following my true passions, which, in some cases are true, but I also think there's some times where you're going to be in a career or in a field you like, and there's just always going to be things that you don't like, that you don't feel like doing. And if you use that momentary feeling of distaste to basically make the decision to quit the whole enterprise, then you're kind of fucked sometimes. So like in high school, I did a lot of backpacking, and even though, um, in theory, like I loved backpacking, every single time I'd be on a hike or an overnight trip, there would actually, I was gonna say there would come a point at which I would hate the hike, but actually I realized that about probably 80% of the time, I would just say, why the fuck am I doing this? I hate this. Why did I sign up for this? Blah, blah, blah. But then afterwards, we would summit, and I would just think, God, like, I'm so glad I did this. I didn't feel like hiking up this mountain, but I'm so glad I did this. This is a really beautiful experience, and if I could, I'd do it again. Um, so okay, I'm starting to ramble a little bit, but you see where I'm going. And back to the question that I asked a few minutes ago, which is, how do you make decisions if you can't always rely on how you feel? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that sometimes I need to stick with things. So sometimes I need to stick with the initial emotion that I had. So, for example, I need to think about my original motivations in signing up to do a hike, or signing up to do a marathon, or signing up to take a really difficult course. And so, even though in the middle of the course I might not feel like continuing, I think that if I just make a goal to kind of finish what I start, that's a much more reliable way of doing things. And of course, sometimes, if you always finish what you start, maybe you will, you know, maybe you'll finish things that you should have quit halfway through, and maybe you'll waste some energy. But I think for me at this point in my life, that would actually be a better system, because I tend to quit things so easily because I just don't feel like doing them. And then maybe in retrospect, I think, well, I could have done that, or I should have done that. And that momentary feeling was just that. It was a momentary feeling that I should not have put that much stake in. So the only solution I can think of to combat, getting swayed by feelings too much, is to just make a promise and tell yourself that you're going to follow through with something, and say, like, for example, okay, I don't know if I'm going to be pre-med my whole life, but I'm going to, commit to finishing this organic chemistry course. And if I don't feel like doing pre-med, then I'll make that decision at a later time. But I've noticed that when you think something is really hard, that's a really bad time to make a decision about whether you're going to continue with it. Because we tend to like what we're good at, and what we can succeed at. And the catch with that is, if you work hard at a lot of things, you can usually succeed in them. And so sometimes you have to work hard at something before you begin to like it. So that's also been like a big, I guess, a lesson that I'm like, trying to learn. So yeah. mm, those are my thoughts now. And they're kind of disorganized. But feel free to let me know what you think, and if you have any ideas or advice for me, I will gladly take it. And this is my last vlog for today, I promise. Okay, I'll talk to you soon, guys.